Hey, everybody. Welcome into the Podcast Daily, the first of its kind. And now I have all of my amigos with me. That's Jeremy Birmingham over there and Bill Landis making his official debut after popping in several times, probably invited, maybe not, I don't know, in Indianapolis for Big Ten Media Days. We're about to get launching for real here. We've had some teases and we've had plenty of content on all of our distribution channels. But now this is the real deal. The three of us are together, and we're going to start detailing what we're going to be doing, what we're going to be providing with the podcast as we move into the season with training camp starting on Thursday morning. Just first of all, I'm very excited to be working with both of you guys. Berm, I've done that before. Bill, you and I just rip a lot of cards together and go to card shows and talk about that. And now we're merging all of this together because now we're all three going to rip cards and still talk about the Buckeyes.
That's the only reason I've done this is just so I can open cards with both of you guys. I would like to apologize for bumping into your videos at Big Ten Media Days. I'm just clumsy, so I'll try to be better in that way, but I do apologize for that.
You were like a giant bear just emerging from the background. And I mean, I know that you're a bigger guy than we are, and like I'm not like I'm an above average size human male, right? But like seeing you in that one video last week, I was like, holy moly, Bill is a big fella. And,
yeah, I was watching it. I walked through. I was like, oh, they disappeared.
I like the suggestion that you were coming in as our, bouncer, our muscle, personal protectors, bodyguard. I think you can do everything else, but consider just putting that in your job description.
Yeah, if you want to add security to everything else I'll be doing, I'm down with that for sure. I think it's actually kind of a miscalling of mine in my life. I've never actually done it, but I'm sort of big for no reason. So I'm into that. Let's do it.
Berm,
big for no reason. I like that.
For no reason. That's great. Hey, Berm, what do you want to do with the podcast this season?
Well, I mean, the real goal for the podcast for all of us, I think, is to provide a new and exciting way for Ohio State fans to get content daily from us about what we're doing when we cover the Buckeyes, whether it's, the day-to-day team stuff, whether it's recruiting stuff, whether it's just the three of us talking about ripping cards. Bill has learned in a short order that I have terrible luck when it comes to ripping cards. And so I'm glad that he got a chance to see that firsthand in Indianapolis. But the purpose of this show, the Podcast Daily, is to make sure that every morning or afternoon or night, whenever you get a chance, folks, to dive into the content, is that you get caught up on what the important things are that day for Ohio State. And this is a situation where we realize that Buckeyes fans, generally speaking, can't get enough of Ohio State football. And with YouTube being just as predominant as it is in the world of social media, what better place to do it than here, and then through all of the Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, etc., to make sure people get everything they need.
Bill, your podcast at The Athletic with Ari Wasserman was very successful. I know you had many people who wanted to make sure that you were doing that as you moved over, as you and I started working at Rivals this week. Still looking for a recruiting writer. At some point, maybe we'll have one. What is it that you hope to get accomplished as you're going to be doing this, I think, more frequently than what you did at The Athletic, which was, again, a very popular, very successful podcast in its own right.
Yeah, I think the thing we had going there was kind of multiple perspectives, in the sense that, like, I was here in Columbus on the ground, and my co-host Ari Wasserman was not, but we had a kind of a good blend there. I think we have the same thing here in the sense that the three of us have different strengths, maybe different ways we analyze things. So I'm excited to kind of bring all that together in a similar, but albeit different way. I think people who followed me since I've been covering Ohio State know that I like talking ball. That's like my favorite thing. So there's clearly a lot else that goes on with Ohio State, and we'll cover that as well. But I'm looking forward to kind of maybe getting a little more into the nitty gritty of things on that side of the sport, and diving in more. I'm not saying I'm going to have like a straight X's and O's podcast all the time, but I think getting a little more in depth on some of the things that I've talked about on a more surface level in the past. So I'm excited about that as well. But yeah, if you are one of the many people we had listening to my two former podcasts, and for whatever reason, enjoy what I have to say. One, I appreciate it, and two, you'll get a lot of the same here.
It's the food takes that apparently people want. I mean,
yeah,
you were the voice of reason on that regard.
I was. I do not consider any fast food pizza joints offerings to be among the best appetizers in America, but to each his own, I suppose.
Berm does.
The Red
though. That's a
Baron talk
problem.
was always my favorite.
Well, we can
I
listen.
don't
We'll
think
talk
that
Red Baron.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that I believe that any fast food pizza places are among the greatest spots to eat in the country. I am saying that occasionally you should suffer through Del Taco with me. That's all.
I mean, how many times do I have to do it? I've already done it twice.
As many times as I want, essentially. I mean, we are in a
That's
city
not what
where
you said.
Del
You said
Taco exists.
sometimes I should have to suffer through Del Taco.
You don't always have to have it, though. I can get it without the judgment and the scorn from my coworkers. Maybe if I could just get that, then I would be, somewhat happier with the arrangement.
Bill, did you go through Del Taco with Berm before?
No, and I can't envision myself ever doing that. I'm sorry.
And I would never ask you to. I think it's just important that we all appreciate each other's individual vices. That's all.
That's fair.
I think I really like the fact that as we get ready to take the podcast on the road this season, that Bill doesn't want Del Taco, and that'll be 2 votes against 1. And that's a powerful vote.
There's not a single place we're going this season that has Del Taco. So we have
don't
lost
know?
the mark on this. Pretty clearly, no regular season stops will have Del Taco.
What if the Big Ten expands immediately? Because they seem to really want to.
To Bellefontaine, Ohio?
Yeah, you go out of your way on the way down to Columbus to make sure that you can swing into a Del Taco locally. So you don't even need to be in California to do that anymore. Just a waste of time and stomach space.
We need to move on from
let's
this
do that.
topic and talk about the Podcast Daily and our roles. Some days I'll host this show with Bill. Some days I'll host it with Austin. Some days Austin and Bill will host it. It's really going to be a matter of rotating. So we want you to get familiar with each of our voices in this space. But the Podcast Daily, the hope is daily news, right? Once a day, check in here, 15 minutes, get everything you need. But of course, I'll still have the traditional stuff people have come to know me from, the recruiting podcast, the interviews with recruits, players, coaches, etc. Austin, what else are you going to have on the podcast?
Yeah, if I've done it before, then the intention is that we continue that for the audience that we have all built up in our previous stops. So if you really liked Buckeye Q and the breakdowns that I did with numerous former players, and most frequently Zach Boren, the intention is to continue doing those. As Bill said, he's much better at the X's and O's than I am. I won't even try to infringe on that space. I like to sit back and just ask the questions of those guys that are experts. Many of you enjoyed that, so we will try to continue Buckeye Q style breakdowns as we move forward. If there's breaking news in the Woody or in the Horseshoe or at any game on the road, we're going to have snap judgments. We're going to be responding and reacting rapidly to what happens. We'll break down press conferences when they're done with additional videos and podcasts into your feed. Those things are going to continue as they always have in the past. They're just now found in a new spot. Hopefully everybody has been able to find them. You're here, and if you've made it this far into the video, you've got a good chance that you've probably already accomplished that part of it. We'll try not to talk about Del Taco or ripping cards in every single episode, but we've done that a lot in this one, just as a way of introducing it. But we're getting into the start of camp. We're going to be here every day in some form or fashion, breaking down games, breaking down practices, breaking down press conferences. I think that with the Podcast Daily, those are going to be shorter than maybe what any of us would think of for detailed breakdowns. Those are going to be saved for some of the other content. We're trying to quick hit some of the headlines there, maybe in 10 to 15 minutes. Make sure everybody's set for any other content that may be coming down throughout the day. Does that sound right?
Sounds right to me.
Sounds tremendous.
And I think it's important, Bill, and we've talked about this. Bill and I talked about this a little bit prior to all this really developing, but our goal is to provide Ohio State fans with a new way to get information. And this, obviously, YouTube is going to be one of those areas we use frequently. It's the largest social media network in the world, and it's a great opportunity for us to talk to people directly. But how much we do on the podcast is ultimately going to be up to the appetite of you guys out there watching and listening. And if you need to find us on all of the YouTube or the podcast networks, one thing I would suggest, because the podcast is somewhat ubiquitous in its name, search for us by name, search for Bill Landis, search for Austin Ward, search for Jeremy Birmingham. That may help you find us on those actual podcast platforms. But what we do here, how much we do here, is sort of going to be up to you guys and how much you respond to it.
Yeah, I'm excited to get that feedback too, to be perfectly honest, because this is a bit different for me. Just the pace of it, I'm used to doing maybe one podcast a week, 1 or 2 podcasts a week. I've done more than that previously, but that's what excites me about this, is sort of the immediacy of it. Like when stuff happens, I think you can expect to hear from us in pretty short order. Whether we're at the Woody after a practice, we're on the field at the shoe after a game, or we're at our homes like we are now, recording sort of in our own spaces. I think we have the availability to react almost immediately to whatever happens in the Ohio State space, and that for me is exciting, because in the past I've had to wait a little bit. Sometimes I feel like I've been chomping at the bit to talk about stuff, and like 2 or 3 days passes by, and now I don't have to do that. So I'm pumped for that.
Yep, we'll all be together at the Woody on Thursday morning for the start of training camp. What is the one thing that you're most looking forward to seeing on Thursday?
Can it just be one individual person?
Yes.
Donovan Jackson, just doing stuff, moving people around.
I should have made a bold prediction that was what you were going to pick.
Yeah, I'm nothing but predictable. But so yeah, I mean, we saw the spring game, right? But that's not real football. So and I suppose practice number 1 isn't real football either. But every time we go out onto that field, every time that Ohio State is kind enough to permit us on the field for practice throughout the summer, the first person I'll be looking toward is Donovan Jackson, to see who he's pushing around at that particular moment. What's
really great for me is that I know that Bill will be watching the offensive line, and so I don't have to. I can go jot down who's playing cornerback, what's filling out the secondary, watch the quarterbacks, and I know that our big man will be watching those big men, and that's great for me. I love it. Berm, are you still thinking?
I'm looking forward to seeing. I'm trying to, of course, just come a little bit different here than everyone else.
Cameron Martinez. Okay, got it.
Season. We've talked all off season about Jim Knowles and the defensive changes and all these things that we're trying to see exactly how this guy fits or this guy fits. To me, the single biggest difference maker on defense, the guy that can take the defense from being a average group to a good group to a potentially great group, is Zach Harrison. And I think that he's had an entire offseason of people not really talking about him, and we've talked so much about Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau and all these other things. And Zach Harrison's still at Ohio State, and he was this close last year so many times to really having a spectacular season. And if he can make that little leap, that little improvement, I think the entire defense is going to change on its head. And I think that Zach Harrison's the guy I'm going to be watching. I want to see him be assertive and dominant in practice.
I think what's great about that first day, and as Bill said, they're not going to be in pads. It's not going to be real football. But, everybody has said for the last few weeks, the last couple of months, boy, it's nice to see Josh Proctor running around full speed. Cam Brown was on the pitch count throughout spring. If he gets to go a little bit more active as camp starts on Thursday, Lathan Ransom with a pretty shocking return to be able to participate in any capacity, in my mind, in training camp after what happened to his leg in the Rose Bowl. Josh Fryer, I remember talking to Thayer Munford at the NFL Combine, like, who's the guy who's made the biggest strides, who has the best chance to make an impact? And he said Josh Fryer, and it's like, that was still coming off of an injury and wasn't able to participate in spring. So there's a handful of guys that we didn't get to see do a whole lot in those practices, the few that we got to see in March and April. There's 4 opportunities penciled in, scheduled right now for the media at the Woody throughout this month. And to see those guys and the progress they've made physically, Cameron Babb and Julian Fleming, I'll throw them in there as well. Just, those guys that were injured coming back. And if there's anybody unexpectedly dealing with something as camp actually debuts, jotting those down in the notebook and see how that might impact Ohio State. Ryan Day did say last week that didn't anticipate anybody being ruled out other than Mitchell Melton with that long-term knee injury. We'll see if that's actually the case on Thursday. He's pretty tight generally with that injury information, but when the Buckeyes get out there, certainly seems like they're going to be as close to full strength and full health as they could be.
Yep. No better time for us at the Podcast Daily to get out there full strength and full health as well, right? I mean, that's what this episode of the Podcast Daily is about. It's about making sure you people out there, you guys, know who we are.
That was intimidating, Bram. You just pointing directly at me. Yeah, with that big V behind you.
You, Bill. You. Oh yeah, I have another one that says you, but I haven't figured it out. I haven't been able to figure out how to properly align that yet.
I thought he was signing off the show, so very smooth segue into the
no
of sort of an introductory.
Yeah, I don't sign off ever. I don't ever sign off. I just want to keep talking.
Going. He's got a 24-hour live stream that's also coming to the podcast as the season goes on, live with Berm in his basement all day long. That is Bill Landis and Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward, and this is the podcast. It's coming to you in a lot of different ways, but get ready for the Podcast Daily coming to you live for the rest of the 2022 season. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you there.